Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. If you are brand new here, my name is Maria DeSimone. I am a professional astrologer. You can find out more about me and my work over at insightfulastrology.com, where I have an entire astrology school offering a full curriculum, astrology classes from beginners all the way through advanced. And today's video is taking us back to the basics, back to the beginning. So for those of you who are familiar with my channel and my work, welcome back. It's great to see you. And this is a video. It is very elementary in a lot of ways, but it's important to remember to cover the foundational parts of astrology in order to excel in understanding this language. And I absolutely cover all of this in great depth in my beginner's course. And so it's January, depending on when you're watching this video. This is basically an evergreen video. So you might, find this video 3 years from now in March or, July. I have no idea. But it's a new year at the time that I'm filming it. So I am welcoming in a bunch of new beginner students to the Insightful Astrology School. Beginner's class begins the end of January. So if you do want to get in on the beginner's level, it is an amazing foundational interactive class where I use your birth charts in the homework assignments and the lesson plans. And it's just a personalized, fun, interactive experience and way to get a good foundation of astrology. So go to insightfulastrology.com and check that out if you're interested. And in today's video, we are going to cover the first house of a birth chart. We're going to cover the sign Aries, and we're going to cover the planet Mars. And part of me wasn't sure if I should do this video in that way because I don't want to mislead you. I don't want you to think, especially if you're brand new to astrology, that Aries equals Mars and that Aries equals the first house. These are not interchangeable. Very often, when astrology is taught, it is taught with you looking at something called the natural zodiac wheel. And in the natural zodiac wheel, the first house cusp has Aries there. And so people start to think, all right, so Aries equals the first house. And that's not true at all. Your first house, the first house for everybody in astrology. First of all, these houses, they represent arenas of life, places where the planetary energies, the celestial influences actually do the most work. They tend to really activate in those areas of your life if a planet is placed in a certain house. And so, or if a planet rules a certain house, which is a little bit more advanced beginner, but that may come later. So let's get back to the first house. If you look at a copy of your birth chart and, Google free chart maker, you can get a copy anywhere these days. You get your copy of your birth chart, you enter your date, time, and location of birth. Voila, you're seeing this mystical, magical representation of your soul and all of its potential. And so the first house is where the soul enters the body. And, I want to take a minute to tell you what I say to all of my new clients that I talk to for the very first time. I give this little explanation of the soul and fate and free will and what we can and can't control in a birth chart and in our life, basically. So I am sure you will agree that you are a soul in a physical body. Now, you may or may not agree with my philosophy. My philosophy is that our soul never dies, that our physical body will die, but our soul is energy. Energy is not destructible. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is. So we are these potent, energetic beings. And we decided on a soul level to incarnate in a physical body, most likely for our soul's evolution, to have certain experiences that would facilitate soul development and growth. What's the point of all that? We're really not going to know until we're dead, right? But the theory is we are trying to get closer to this divine higher consciousness. Maybe it's unconditional love. Maybe it's just this high level consciousness. But whatever the reason is, we, on a soul level, recognize that, okay, we need to take on this physical body as a human in order to check some boxes and have certain experiences. So, on a soul level, we actually decided to be born at a certain date, time, location in the world. And we have a soul contract with all the key players in our life, our parents, our siblings, romantic partners, children, all of it. The big people, we've got those soul contracts with. And we decided that that was predestined. Before we came here, we decided that we were going to have these people in our tribe, in our soul group. And since energy cannot be created or destroyed, you will also agree that we live on an actual physical planet, planet Earth, that is part of this vast solar system. And in the solar system that we live in, we've got several different planets. The sun and the moon are luminaries. We know this, but we qualify them and just discuss them as if they were planets to make things simple. But we have several other planetary energies. There are asteroids. There are so many different little nuggets. We're just going to focus on the planets. And yes, we do still consider Pluto a planet energetically. So these planets were making very specific mathematical connections to each other the moment our soul entered the body, the moment we were born. And what happens is when our mom is pregnant with us, our soul is free to dip in and out of the womb, right? We're not tethered to the physical body just yet. But when our mother gives birth to us and we take our first live independent breath, we are inhaling not just the breath of life, we are inhaling the energy of those planets. So as we take that first live breath, whatever mathematical connections are happening between those planets energetically imprints onto our soul as our soul is entering this physical body. And that is how astrologers can look at a horoscope and read all of this information about your character potential, your karmic experiences, your strengths and talents, your short circuits and weaknesses and trouble spots. It is truly amazing. That part of astrology is fated. And once you're here, you cannot change that mathematical lineup that is represented in your horoscope. Where you have free will is the more you learn how to understand the energies that are at your disposal in this lifetime, the more you can choose to activate those energies in a higher vibration way versus a more shadow expression, a more difficult expression of that energy. So we do have free will, guys. Our free will, however, is limited and contained in what our possibilities even are astrologically in a birth chart. So let me know in the comments if this explanation makes sense to you, if it resonates with you. And so now that I've explained what astrology is and how it works in our life, let's move on to the beginning. Remember, I said you take your first live breath and the soul enters your body. Well, guess what? The first house in your birth chart, the 9 o'clock position of anybody's birth chart, that is the first house cusp. That represents the soul entering the body, specifically the ascendant degree. So the rising sign is just the sign that was rising on the eastern portion of the horizon when you were born. That sign contains 30 degrees. There are 30 degrees in a sign. And the ascendant degree can be any one of those 30 degrees, depending on the time you were born, your latitude and longitude. So that's why birth time is so important in astrology, because that ascendant degree will change by approximately a degree every 4 minutes or so. And this is approximate, this is not exact. Depends on your location, that varies a little bit, but that is an approximate number. So being off by your birth time by 4 minutes, by 8 minutes, you can see how it starts to affect the accuracy of certain components in your horoscope, specifically the mathematical structure of it, of those houses. Remember, houses are man made, those planets are God made. So that first house represents the soul entering the body, because the first house is your physical body. And that's what the first house represents. So it is not that complicated when you understand that the first house is literally you. It is 100% about you. There is no room for anything else for that first house to be. It is your physical body. It is connected to your physical appearance. It is connected to your personality and your identity formation. And that is what everybody's first house represents in their birth chart. Now, your first house is going to look different from somebody else's first house because you all have a different sign rising. Maybe your first house has Aries rising like me, and it follows the natural zodiac. Maybe you've got Gemini rising, or Pisces rising, or Leo rising. Depends on your particular birth chart. So don't let that trip you up. That is a very common source of confusion for the total beginner. The natural zodiac is different from your accurate birth chart, and it is your accurate birth chart that we are learning about and focusing on. So, first house, all about you. Now, the first house in astrology can have planets there. Maybe you've got a couple of planets in your first house. Maybe you have nothing in your first house. That's okay. If you have planets placed in your first house, then those planets are visible. The whole world can see what's going on in your first house. It is like what you see is what you get energy. So if you've got Venus in your first house, people are seeing that Venusian energy, how it's coming across. It's going to be represented by the sign that Venus is in. If you've got Saturn in your first house, people are seeing that. That's going to add a very nuanced dimension to your personality projection. But it is an authentic part of who you are. The first house is all about you. Now, if you don't have any planets in the first house, obviously you still have an identity. Listen, there are 10 planets and 12 houses. Everyone has empty houses, and there is an advanced beginner's way to look at what an empty house represents. And it is the concept of rulership dynamics, which I get into, and I teach you how to work with this so effortlessly, starting from the beginner's class. Rulership dynamics are critical to accuracy and really specific information about a birth chart, and later on with predictive astrology. So if you have no planets in your first house, what do you do? How do you find out about your identity, your physical body, your sense of self? Well, what's the sign on the first house? What are those? What does that sign represent in terms of qualities and characteristics? There's your start. And then you want to look at what planet rules your rising sign. And this video is not going to cover that, but the planet that rules your rising sign is known as the driver for your life force and energy. It is a very big driver in life. It is connected to your soul's most immediate purpose and how you are driven to just actualize something big and the reason for your existence. Well, one of the reasons for your existence. So, wherever that planet is placed in your birth chart tells you a lot of information about that. And again, this is all covered in my beginner's class. It's more like intermediate beginner energy. So I'm trying not to get too off topic here, but I can't help but address these different things as I communicate them, because I want to really give you guys a solid foundation in understanding astrology. So that is the first house in everybody's birth chart. Now let's talk about the sign Aries. Aries may or may not be your rising sign. That depends. We already covered that. There are 12 possibilities to the sign that can be rising for you. But this video is about Aries, the first house, and Mars, because in the natural zodiac, they are taught together. But that doesn't mean that Aries equals the first house. Do you guys understand that now? Good. So let's talk about the sign Aries, because you might have planets placed in this sign. So the planets are the characters, and we're going to talk about the character Mars in a little bit. The signs represent the costume that those characters wear, how those characters are going to express their particular energy that they're supposed to express in your birth chart. Well, the sign Aries has a lot of significations. We're going to start with elements and modes. Now, the elements and the modes are covered heavily. Again, you're going to understand that like the back of your hand by the end of my beginner's class. But the sign Aries is in the element of fire, and it is in the cardinal mode. Cardinal signs are found at the beginning of every season. So Aries begins spring. And the essence of cardinality is to initiate, to bring forth something new life in this case, because spring is, everything blossoms. So Aries is a cardinal sign, and the cardinal nature is I'm going to do something, I'm going to take initiative. Aries is also a fire sign. Fire signs are the element that include Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. The cardinal signs, I said, are the beginning of every season. So that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Aries is cardinal fire. Now, the fire part of Aries very much connects to its passion, its excitability, its capacity to just be enthusiastic and generative. Fire signs can be very bold. So that is the element and the mode put together to help explain some of what Aries does in a birth chart, what Aries represents. But there's more. So we get some of our information about a sign from its element, then from its mode, and we also look to see, is it a masculine or a feminine sign, yin or yang? And these signs take turns. So Aries is masculine, Taurus is feminine, Gemini is masculine, Cancer is feminine, so on around the wheel of the natural zodiac. And remember, this is how ancient astrologers qualified these energies. So we're talking about ancient ways of understanding these energies, but they're extremely valid. So the masculine nature of Aries makes it very generative. And Aries in particular is extremely concerned with identity. Now, all fire signs are concerned with identity. That is something that they're very passionate and enthusiastic about. But Aries is concerned about initiating cardinal, their identity, and develop a very solid sense of independence and self and self-awareness, right? You become aware that you're living in a physical body with the sign Aries. Now, whatever planet you have in the sign Aries, what's going to happen is that planet is forced to wear the Aries costume and express itself in initiating ways that promote identity and self-awareness, that promote courageous, bold behavior. Why did I say that last part? Courageous, bold behavior. Because Aries is a sign ruled by the planet Mars. Every sign in astrology is ruled by a planet. And that planet that rules over a particular sign offers incredible additional insight into that sign's expression. So, Mars. You may or may not have planets in the sign Aries, but you all have the planet Mars somewhere in your chart, in some house, in some sign. If Mars is in Aries in the first house of your chart and you have Aries rising, then and only then are we talking about pure Aries first house Mars energy. But most of us do not have Mars in the first house in the sign of Aries. We have it somewhere else. And Mars is the planet that is all about your capacity to act. It is your capacity to assert yourself based on your desire, what you want. I call Mars the gas in your fuel tank. It is the planet that gets you going. So it is the gas. And what kind of gas are you going to use? Well, that depends on the sign that Mars is in. Okay, so how are you going to express this courageous, bold assertiveness energy that you've got? Through the sign that it's placed in. So, Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, and Mars is the planet of war. Mars is the planet of goals. I want to show you a book right now. It is a wonderful book, an amazing book. It's written by Demetra George. Astrology for Yourself. It's a workbook. And while I don't require this book in my beginner's class, there's another book that I require. I give my students many pages from this workbook as exercises, in particular, the final exercise, because this workbook really puts together an understanding of basic astrology in companionship with an instructor. And I absolutely recommend this book to students. It's not a required book, but it is definitely a recommended book. So I want to read you something that Demetra George wrote about the planet Mars. Okay? So Mars is the warrior, it is the ruler of Aries, it is all about I act. Mars, the planetary ruler of Aries and Scorpio, we're not talking about Scorpio right now, the sign Scorpio, but keep in mind Mars rules two signs, Aries and Scorpio, symbolizes the capacity to act and assert ourselves based upon personal desire. Through Mars, we learn to act as independent and self sufficient beings and to project ourselves into the world. Mars gives us courage to stand up for our rights, to assert ourselves, and to express anger when necessary. The proper channeling of this assertive energy can produce great accomplishments, courageous deeds, or athletic achievements. However, when the power of Mars goes unchecked, it manifests as reckless aggression, violence, and war. The prevalence of violence in the world today indicates that one of humanity's greatest challenges lies in learning to redirect its Mars energies into more constructive outlets. Mars also represents our capacity for physical pleasure and desire for sexual gratification. The sexual orientation expresses itself through the masculine desire to thrust, penetrate, and eject its seed. Mars's inherent phallic nature is depicted by its symbol, which resembles an erect penis, literally. And individuals with a strong Mars invariably possess strong sexual desires. Their challenge lies in learning to constructively apply this powerful creative force. And Mars physiologically, because every planet and sign also corresponds to something in medical astrology, so you may be interested in this. Mars rules the muscular system, the blood, specifically the red oxygen carrying hemoglobin, the male sexual organs, and the adrenal glands. People who repress their Mars function often experience a deficiency in one of these bodily functions and complain of having too little energy or drive in their daily lives. Now, there's more with Mars in medical astrology, but that's not what this video is about. So, the high vibration of your expression of Mars in your birth chart is going to give you courage, assertive drive, enterprising energy, and desire. The shadow expression of your Mars placement could potentially bring aggressive, violent, selfish, and coarse behavior. That all depends on what Mars is doing in your chart, guys. What sign is Mars in? Well, let's talk about if Mars is in a sign that it rules. If Mars is in Aries, I want you to pretend that we're in like a war. Okay, so you have been put to war. There are a total of 12 soldiers. You are one of them. And the soldier, the warrior, is represented by Mars itself. Each one of these 12 soldiers that are put together to fight in some kind of war are going to express themselves differently based on the sign that they're in. So let's talk about Mars in the sign of Aries. That is a very strong and direct Mars. Mars in Aries is going to be the firefighter that runs into the fiery building, the person that runs towards the danger immediately, courageously, impulsively, without thinking twice, without hesitation. So one of those 12 people is going to be that person. And it's a really strong direct placement because Mars in Aries is expressing itself in a masculine way. Remember, Aries is a masculine sign. So Mars is able to bring forth all of its best energy in a generative way. Now, Mars rules another sign, Scorpio, but Scorpio is a feminine sign. So feminine signs are more internalized. And Scorpio has a different element and mode. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So there's a big difference in how Mars is going to express itself when placed in Scorpio. It is still going to be very strong because Scorpio is a sign ruled by Mars. So there is that incredible affinity and ability to do what Mars wants to do. When a planet is placed in a sign of its rulership, it can do what it needs to do without impediment. But Mars through Scorpio is very different from Mars and Aries. They're still strong, but they're going to act in different ways. And Mars in Scorpio is going to be more under the radar, less direct. In fact, not direct at all, because it is a feminine sign and it is going to be more stable, steady, and enduring in its energy because it is a fixed sign, whereas Aries and a cardinal sign is going to be boom, let's go for it. Quick, let's get to business. Let's kill everybody. In the fixed sign, it's going to be we're going to wait. We're going to wait and be strategic. And then when we know we've got them, we'll get them. So they're going to hide under the radar in the darkness, and then they're going to get their enemy. And in a water sign, compared to a fire sign, that's also a very different expression of Martian energy. Mars in a water sign is very emotionally tied to its actions, and they hold on to that because it's a fixed sign. So there's definitely more I could say about this. And this video, I'm not going to go through all the Mars signs, but you should be able to get the idea that Mars, the planet of war, the planet of your energy, the gas in your fuel tank, is going to express itself in a very different way, a very different style, depending on the sign's placement. So all those 12 signs, all those 12 warriors, very different ways of doing their Martian stuff. And what adds to that is the house placement of your Mars. Because Mars is not only going to be in a specific sign, but it's going to be in a specific house, which means that where you do the Mars things is going to be most dominated in that area of your life. That is where you're going to put a lot of your energy, a lot of your passion, a lot of your enthusiasm, possibly a lot of your anger and warrior nature, for better or for worse, in whatever style Mars is in its sign for you in your chart. So you can see that when we talked about Mars, we didn't say anything about your physical body. It represents your energy. It represents your libido. It represents war and courage, but it's not your physical body. The first house in astrology is your physical body. It is where the soul enters the body at the rising sign degree. And the first house is all about the development of your personality specifically. And the sign, Aries, is going to be somewhere in your horoscope because everybody has every sign represented somewhere and it rules a house in your chart. You may or may not have planets in that sign. But this video has been long enough. I'm going to stop right here. Let me know in the comments if you learned something new, if you understand the concept of the first house or the planet Mars or the sign Aries in a way that you never did before. Let me know in the comments and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.